If you're looking for great value in speakers, where should you look? Hi, I'm Joe with Gramophone. We're really excited to be here today because we're also with our good friend from SVS, Nick Brown. Nick, how are you?
Joe, always a pleasure.
Good. Nick is their vice president of marketing. And Nick, really, there's four things I want to talk about in this video. The first one is going to be, of course, the transition that you guys have now made to the Ultra Series and what an amazing difference this has made. But even before that, let's just talk a quick moment about your market position as a company, because I think the way we see it, SVS is one of the strongest brands you could find in what I like to think of as the entry level of the high end.
Yeah, really our philosophy in terms of our go-to market is to bring world-class immersive audio experiences, but at price points that are a little bit more inclusive. And when you look throughout our product line, whether it's, our least expensive subwoofer, the SB1000 Pro, up to our behemoth, the PB17 Ultra Revolution, you're going to find that same performance story throughout the line, and you really never have this sense of compromising. And that really trickles all into our product design philosophy in terms of, when we do a new product launch, it's not just, let's slap a new finish on it, maybe a new trim ring. It's all about a complete reimagination of those products to bring something that has never been offered at that price point before. And I think a lot of people know SVS, and of course I started talking about us for our subwoofers, but we are a full-fledged audio brand, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that complete ecosystem of products that SVS now offers. But our Ultra Evolution speakers here specifically have really put us on the map with that two-channel community, as well as grown our, I guess you could say, gravitas when it comes to just that whole high-performance audio scene in general. So, while we do love to be considered, a brand that delivers uncompromising value, I also think we can hang with some of those, triple-digit, six-digit speakers that are truly considered the highest echelon of high performance. So price-wise, I would agree with you, but performance-wise, we're going to stand in the ring with there and throw punches and I think hang in every round.
Yeah. Well, the Ultra Series, Nick has referred to it as a complete reimagining. And once we actually started digging into it, Nick, I realized that this is a completely different product than your previous high-end products. So if you can, let's start digging into the various components of why these are so much different and what exactly you've done.
Yeah. So one of the big stories that separates them, first of all, is the fact that we now have three tower speakers, and they all have very similar design, aspects here. We're standing next to the flagship Ultra Evolution Pinnacles. These are the largest speakers that SVS makes, the true flagship. And there's really three main technology stories that really set these apart and completely differentiate them from the original Ultra series. And, we are SVS, so I'll start with the woofers because you know what? We love our bass. And you'll notice this is the front of the cabinet here, and this is actually the rear of the cabinet. So what you're seeing are four 8-inch woofers on each one of these speakers. And essentially what you're getting out of this is incredible, authoritative, low frequency output that's also super tight with that crisp transient response. And it really will deliver just room filling bass throughout the listening area, because essentially you have, with a pair of these towers, 8 woofers firing in different directions throughout the room when they're towed in. So you get that nice density of low frequency sound waves throughout the listening area. So again, you're getting that powerful, really almost guttural bass down to close to 24, 23 hertz, which, even the largest full range floor standing speakers, that's about as low as they can go.
Yeah.
So we're really proud with what we were able to do with our woofers here. And then the other point that makes these special is we borrowed a little bit of a design philosophy from our 3000 micro subwoofer. And what they do is sort of a push-pull effect. So the drivers move in together, they move out together. So you could literally balance a nickel on top of these tower speakers because there's a complete cancellation of any kind of vibrational energy within the cabinet. So you get that clean slate from which to produce those low frequencies.
Absolutely. The fact that you've got the identical driver both on the back and on the front, this one obviously having been turned around, means the cancellation means that this cabinet is not itself generating low frequency elements, because in a lot of speakers, really the cabinet vibrating is the part that's keeping us from hearing the clean, tight, that crisp kind of bass that you're describing. So, having two up here at the top and then two more down at the bottom of the cabinet, keeping the cabinet from adding its own vibration, that is a big deal.
Yeah, and you'll notice the ports as well. And this woofer inside the cabinet, I mean, there's very rigid internal bracing, but it's actually a separate sub enclosure within the cabinet to just maintain that better separation between the mid-range and the tweeters as well. So really, we wanted to make sure that these would play about as deep and with as much authority as any full range tower speaker out there. And if you read some of the reviews, Stereophile, Absolute Sound, they've all made their best product awards. They'll definitely validate that as far as what they can do in the low frequencies. But that's not all. We didn't want to just be like, well, let's make a really bass heavy speaker because that would be too easy for SVS. So the other thing we did, which is really anomaly at this price point, is you may not be able to see it from the front, but it's got this curved front baffle here. And SVS did not invent this, so I'm not going to take full credit for it.
Right.
But we call it acoustically centered time alignment. And essentially, each one of these drivers, the mid-range and the woofer, and then the outermost point of the tweeter, basically the sonic emanation points where the sound has actually come from, they're aligned in a vertical plane. And what this allows us to do is have the sound leave the drivers, the mid-range, the tweeter, and hit your ear at the exact same instant. And this results in just having really rock solid imaging, a beautiful sound stage. And it's just that extra step, whereas normally you would do it in the crossover with some like micro delays and things like that. We're able to physically align these and get just that much better imaging. And again, this is not an easy thing to pull off from a industrial design perspective. It took a lot of work to get the angles correct and to get this form factor to actually be able to withstand holding the drivers and all the internal bracing. But it definitely pays off, especially in a two-channel environment where people are doing critical music listening.
Yeah, and when you are auditioning a speaker that's got really good imaging, you hear it, you know it, because it sounds more like the musicians are really in front of you than listening to a box. But if you can do it physically, Nick, as you've described, because obviously this tweeter has a much smaller, motor structure behind it. So this driver sort of appears to be out in front of the tweeter, but really, as you say, the point of emanation at the back of the driver is lined up exactly with where the back of the tweeter is lined up. And the less you have to do in the crossover network to make it image correctly, the better off you are. So
Absolutely.
a very wise approach with the way that you've sculpted the cabinet.
Yeah, no, it makes a big difference. And I think just the look of it too, it kind of gives it a sort of futuristic almost, we've heard, but very modern look. And with the beautiful piano gloss black here, it makes a stunning statement visually as well as audibly. And so, I don't want to throw any shade at the tweeter too, because this was probably one of the biggest advancements that we made over the previous series. We took our aluminum dome tweeter, and I know some people, when they hear metal dome tweeters, they think, oh, well, maybe they'll be a little bit bright or they'll have a bit of that fatiguing nature to it. And, what we wanted to do was completely remove any aspect of that. So through a process called vapor deposition, which really wasn't even possible about 10 years ago, we applied a layer of industrial carbon diamond dust to the outer layer of that aluminum dome tweeter. Now, what this does is add significant rigidity to it. So it becomes much more able to handle those high frequencies without breaking up, but it doesn't add any mass, like very little mass. So it gets airy, it gets effervescent, but then the breakup frequency extends beyond 40,000 hertz, which is, about beyond the level of human hearing. You're able to just get crystal clear, like I was saying, effervescent, airy, high frequencies coming from the tweeter, and it really melds really nicely with the mid-range and the woofer design we did. And I would say a lot of people who have heard both series have said that the highs from this new Ultra Evolution line have really made a massive quantum leap forward.
Yeah, the fact that the speakers are so bass capable versus what you see from some of the other vendors that are out there almost demands that your tweeter be as good as what you've put in this product, so that you're really getting, again, that coherent blend of the lows, mids, the highs, and all, like you said, spatially correct, so that you're getting a good imaging on top of it.
Yeah, and it doesn't just limit itself to the material science of that diamond carbon. Even this diffuser, if you're able to zoom in on it, you'll see it's sort of this irregular pattern here. And what we've done there, it's essentially an organic cellular lattice structure. And that's a fancy way of saying that we borrowed it from nature. But we went through about 25 different prototypes with this tweeter diffuser. And, I know the tweeter diffuser, one of its main purposes is like, so the kids don't come there and dent the dome tweeter. But it also has important characteristics as far as dispersion goes. And we found that this tweeter design, this organic cellular lattice structure, that's a tongue twister there, try to say that. It really provided the broadest sweet spot, a great sort of airy sound stage as well. And we went through a lot of rigor trying to get to a tweeter diffuser even that would provide the best acoustic properties. And while again, it's not going to completely change the entire sound of the speaker, it was something that we didn't want to take any sort of compromise on. And it really did make a difference as far as, again, broadening out that sweet spot and just taking the tweeter to the next level.
Yeah, we'll put a close-up of the tweeter so you can see, but when you look at the actual this part that's right here covering the tweeter, you realize that what you're really talking about is all those holes are of different diameters.
Mhm.
It's not a series of holes that are the exact same size and shape, which, obviously in your research has led, you said you did 25 of these, has led to a tweeter that's a more open sounding tweeter. It's not an easy thing to pull off, especially at the kind of price points at which you're now able to use this tweeter.
Yeah, the original tweeter diffuser was a much more regular pattern, and we just found that this was another small step we could do without adding a ton of cost that would take it to the next level. And it took, significant design resources, but we got there, and so we're proud of it. From a high level, the only other thing I would mention as far as these speakers go is, we worked really hard to try to make a speaker that would truly please the two-channel hi-fi crowd, but also have all the excitement, the big dynamics, the low frequency extension that the home theater crowd craves. I think for a long time, because we have such a legacy with subwoofers, ported and sealed, people were like, well, they make great home theater speakers, but they're not revealing, they're not refined enough for the two-channel crowd. And I know here at Gramophone, the events that we've done, we're really trying to show that we can hang with some of those, ultimate hi-fi speakers as well. And so you get the refinement, the clarity, the transparency, that ability to really just show off the natural tonality of a human voice or an instrument. But then you can also step up and get those big cinematic action moments, and they can convey all of that with truth and with authority. And I think that's something we're really proud of, is that we have speakers and a community that can embrace all of their listening tastes, and they don't feel like, well, I have this great system for two-channel listening and I have these different speakers for home theater. They can really do it all.
Yeah, and when you're listening, Nick, to a speaker that's very linear and accurate in terms of its frequency response, but it's lacking in dynamics, you know it because it's just not all that fun to listen to.
That's it.
And these are really pleasing in terms of the overall balance of them, but they're also fun to listen to because they're dynamic speakers as well.
Yeah, you nailed it. Like, if we're not having fun here, like enjoying our music, then what are we doing? And one of my favorite anecdotes is we were at the Munich High End Show, which is the largest hi-fi show in the world.
Yep.
And we had a gentleman who had just come from listening to a $750,000 stereo setup. And
That was my stereo.
yeah, I'm sure that was right in your that was your bedroom system though, not the big system. But we, he came in and he's like, I just heard this track, and that's one thing we do. We take requests,
Yeah.
which is, sort of a little bit anti, a lot of these shows, because you have this curated list of the perfect songs that make your speakers sound perfect. And we're like, you know what? Throw caution to the wind. Come on, give us your request. So he comes in, he's like, I just heard this track. I'm not going to do the German accent because I'll butcher it, but I just heard this song on a 750, nearly $1 million system, and I'd love to hear it on yours because I've heard these are 5,000 a pair, 5,000 euro, 6,000 euro. And I just want to kind of get a sense for, what I'm getting in terms of that upgrade, or if there are diminishing returns. And so we put on the track, typical German, very stoic, very like, not revealing anything. And then he, still doesn't give anything. He's like, now play this track, kind of nods his head a little bit. He's like, you know what? The best thing I can say about these speakers is that they're addictive. Like, I was ready to leave the other room after hearing this track, but I think you guys did everything that they could do, but brought some fun and energy and excitement. And I want to keep hearing more of my music because I'm hearing things that I didn't hear before. And not to just, disparage any of those true high-end speaker brands, because again, they do phenomenal sound, reproduction. But that's what we're after. We want to show that you can get that, but at a fraction of the price, and not feel like you have to compromise.
Love it. Anything else you want to mention here, or can we move on to topic 2, which is the room?
Yeah, the only thing I'll mention is, there's 3 towers. These are the pinnacles. Then we have the Titans, which are a little bit smaller. They have a 6.5-inch woofer, and then the Ultra Evolution towers, which have a 5.25 woofer. We have a true 3-way center channel, a Ultra Evolution elevation speaker for height effects and surrounds, and then 2 pairs of bookshelves, our Ultra Evolution bookshelves, and our Nanos, which are a smaller bookshelf. So it's a much bigger, more ambitious product line than we have with our original flagships. And we expect them to be around for a while. So it's a great opportunity to kind of hear the different levels that they play at.
But let's just talk a little bit about the influence of the room, because if we say, okay, this is a really good speaker for the money that you're asking
Mm.
for it, and we put it in your living room and then in your basement and then in my den and so forth, it's going to sound a little bit different than all of them. Let's talk a little bit about the influence of the room and the EQ solution you're working on.
You know, especially with subwoofers, and that's what this auto EQ
Yep.
room solution will be for. You know, a matter of a couple inches or a foot moving a subwoofer can have a tremendous impact, just like having a different room vaulted ceilings,
That's right.
open concept. These things can all greatly impact the low frequency extension and performance within your system to the point where, you know, you could be sitting where I am and be like, wow, this has got an incredible bass trap. And then you could be where you are and it's like, well, where did it go? So a lot of what this
No
auto,
bass.
yeah, exactly. You get these peaks and nulls. So what the auto EQ room correction is really trying to do is by taking a series of measurements at your various listening positions, much like you would do with Odyssey or some of the full frequency room correction. Do that for the subwoofer so you get much more even bass response, much more predictable results in the areas where you're actually seating, and just take the room out of the equation a little bit more. So you have a little bit more flexibility as far as the placement of the subwoofer, and then you're able to rerun your calibration of your main system. And then that subwoofer is already dialed in really, really well and it's able to just enhance the entire performance of the setup that much more.
Right. And really, the bass end of the spectrum is the place where the room will have the most influence. We've all walked into an empty room, no furniture at all. You know, maybe it's a new addition to the home and you clap your hands and there's that ringing effect. Well, now you put all the couches and furniture and all those things in there and some carpeting, and it doesn't ring like that. So people, I think, sometimes assume that that's where the worst problems are. But in fact, the biggest problems really tend to come in bass reproduction. And so the fact that you're working on a solution, which we already know when it's ready, we're going to be just so happy to talk to our customers about it. And we'd rather have you wait until it's really ready before it's introduced to the consumers.
Yeah, we're super excited. And just to say, it will be available on our 5000 Revolution and 17 Ultra Revolution subwoofers. It will not be backwards compatible. But if you know anything about SVS, we trickle all of this technology down into future launches. So you'll see it come to lower price points in some of our smaller subwoofers as new launches unfold over the next year, 2 years or so. But we could not be more excited. I mean, you said it. I think the room itself is probably one of the most underrated parts of your system as far as how much it can impact the performance. So anything you can do, whether it's treatments, whether it's a more sophisticated auto EQ solution, you know, taking measurements, these things are only going to enhance that ability for you to suspend disbelief and really just put yourself into the action and hear your music and your content like you've never heard it before.
Love it. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about some of our best selling SVS products.